Hey everybody, before we begin the show, I wanted to give a shout out to our friends at POWERPOOL. POWERPOOL is a mining pool and is one of the most profitable for miners. So if you have one miner at home or a fleet of miners at scale, point your workers to POWERPOOL to enjoy the best payouts. POWERPOOL supports a number of algorithms, SHA-256 for Bitcoin, X11 for Dash, and others. And of course, we're focused and we care about the most, S-CRYPT for Litecoin, Dogecoin, and now Bell's Coin, merge mining. Pointing your workers to POWERPOOL is easy with its simple user interface, and the platform also has all the reporting available that your operation needs. Typically, POWERPOOL extends a low 1% pool fee. However, if you register with the 84 million link in the show notes, you will lock in a sub 1% pool fee, which is excellent. Cheers, happy mining. Hello and welcome to the 84 Million Podcast. First podcast of 2025, our new year. We're at episode 30, and we're very grateful to have with us today Mr. Steve McClurg. So Steve McClurg is ex-founder at VALKYRIE and current CEO of Nashville-based Canary Capital, a digital asset hedge fund, and he launched that in October 2024. Steve is also a partner at Clutch Mining. He can be found on X at Stephen McClurg. So welcome to the show, sir. Good to have you.
Hey, very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to explore what Canary is doing, specifically in terms of Litecoin ETFs. Pretty exciting. But before we go that direction, maybe give us a little bit about your background or your interest in cryptocurrency or even Litecoin.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually spent most of my career early in TradFi. I was a bond trader, a bond manager, and did structured credit, all the kind of really boring things that you do when you're in the universe of bonds. But I spent I was running the emerging market trading desk actually when Bitcoin came out, and my old boss, the late Scott Minerd, was really interested in Bitcoin. And we were also gym partners, by the way. So we were workout buddies, and we were at the gym one day, and he was asking me what I knew about Bitcoin, because I also took a stint away from traditional finance for a few years, at a video game company called Electronic Arts. So, because I'm like the oddball that worked at a tech game company, everybody thought I was the tech expert. Which I'm not, but we were chatting, and so that's really when I discovered it, was actually doing research for my TradFi job back in 2010, and then I got into I started buying Bitcoin pretty early. And then in 2016, I decided to leave TradFi and move into the world of crypto. So here I am. Been doing it as a business since 2016. And here we are at Canary, focused on, really active management. I'm more of a hedge fund manager than anything else. I think, a lot of people know about the ETFs because they're all public, from VALKYRIE days, from Canary days. But, really, my background is active management. So we run a hedge fund that focuses on cryptocurrencies, but also hedges the risk out with fixed income trading.
Amazing. Thank you for that. You've been around a while. 2010, pretty good. I don't know even how many of our listeners were involved in 2010. I know a lot of us kind of 2017, we came around and things like this. I was aware of it older. I'll say 2011, because it was when I was with the Ron Paul campaign out in California. We were talking about Bitcoin and everything else, but really interesting story, and EA too. Well, let's look at what you're doing now with Canary. That's the big one today, and I think it's huge. So Canary, your organization, Canary Capital, filed for the Litecoin ETF. I have written down here on October 15th, 2024. So can you kind of share your impetus on looking to Litecoin specifically? Kind of what is your conviction about opening up this Litecoin ETF?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I actually I got introduced to Litecoin. I mean, I knew about it for a very long time. I thought it was very interesting. Obviously, some of the issues back in the day with Bitcoin is speed, cost. It's definitely more secure than anything else out there. But if you're making you know transactions, why not just use a credit card, which is instant? And so from a blockchain perspective, Litecoin brought that lower cost, higher speed aspect, which is how I came across it. And then became friends with Charlie Lee several years ago, and so really started digging into Litecoin because of that. We were actually on a podcast together once, talking about how he created Litecoin, and I actually found it quite fascinating, his story, more than anything else. I mean, yeah, I was researching Bitcoin in 2010, but I wasn't smart enough to buy it back then.
Right.
But hearing his story about how he was like, basically going and meeting, he was a developer at, I think, at Google, and meeting people at like Starbucks and handing them, like bags of cash and buying their Bitcoin from them because there was really no other way to do it. It's like, wow, man, you took a massive risk on a technology and a product that is not even mainstream enough to where there were exchanges at the time when you were buying them.
So true.
So that's
Yeah.
pretty impressive, But yeah, we were on the podcast, and he was kind of describing why and how he built Litecoin, and that really intrigued me. But that's really how I got introduced to it.
So that's how you kind of discovered it in terms of Canary choosing it as an asset that you want to set up an ETF for. Was that just because it's been around a while, it's reliable, or was there anything else going on that you had some conviction for Litecoin specifically?
Yeah, of course, all the it has been around for a while. It's reliable. It's helpful when you know the founder, and and their credibility. But more importantly, for the ETF, again, all those things are important. But I was actually just thinking about a speech that Gary Gensler had made, and I learned this, early on, that he's one of those people that says what he means and means what he says. And we analyzed his rhetoric quite a bit when we were launching, the Bitcoin related ETFs at VALKYRIE. It's one of the reasons why we were able to get ahead of a lot of other people in things like Bitcoin futures, Bitcoin mining ETFs. Bitcoin spot, obviously everybody went at the same time, but we were pretty early in there. But it was really his rhetoric that drove things. And after the ETH ETFs launched, I remembered a speech where he said, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Litecoin are not securities. I said, oh, well, he approved, and as much as everybody in crypto hates Gary Gensler,
Right.
he was the one that approved a Bitcoin ETF and an ETH ETF. And if he said that those three are not securities, I thought, well, should apply for a Litecoin ETF, because out of the largest tokens out there, it's clearly one on his list that's not a security. So that's what we did. I mean, it's kind of, it's so simple, it's kind of stupid, but that's usually how things work. So yeah, we decided to put together an application. Frankly, Canary we really weren't planning on going into the ETF business when we launched the company in early September. It wasn't until about maybe mid-September that we're starting to see the opportunities and starting to think about it a little bit. But yeah, we filed in October. We could have filed a few days before that, the day we did, but we wanted to line up with the anniversary of the creation of Litecoin.
Right on. Right on. I didn't even have any idea that that was in your mind, but I almost mentioned that, saying this is within days of the 13th anniversary.
Yeah. Well, technically the 13th anniversary was on a Sunday. So you can't actually file an ETF on a Sunday. So it was the next day.
Wow. Pretty cool. That's a nice little bit of history that I don't think anybody of us knew that. Now, I will say there's other interests in ETF. So how does it feel to be the first one there? Because we're looking at Tuttle. I think, what is it? I have it written down. Hashdex has some sort of bundling going on. So Grayscale, we've talked about on the show before because they've had LTCN, which was a traditional finance vehicle. Now they're wanting to convert, but you beat all these folks by months. So how does it feel to be first one going after the Litecoin ETF? First is first.
Yeah, what I think what happened was everybody was afraid. Well, look, there was a few Solana filings right after ETH, and the SEC immediately rejected them or asked them to withdraw. And we decided, so I think that kind of scared off everybody. Like, okay, Solana is the next biggest one, and if the SEC is really going to shut the door here, why bother? I was like, yeah, there's got to be, I think I'm right here. I think I literally played Gary Gensler's speech over and over again to try to hear if there was any nuance to what he said, and there really wasn't. I was like, yeah, this is the right time. So we decided that we would lead off actually with Litecoin. Well, actually, we're also thinking about, okay, well, Litecoin is not a security, but is there anything else? Right? Because it's a good question.
Yeah.
Is to start throwing things out there, but is there anything else? And one of the interesting things about HBAR, a lot of people are like, why HBAR? That's a weird one. Well, I was actually in South Korea the first week of September at a crypto conference out there. I hadn't been out there in a long time, but the interesting thing about South Korea is it often passes the US in crypto trading volume, depending on, what month it is.
Yeah.
So there was earlier that year, Korea again passed the US in crypto trading volume. Like, it's such an important market. It gets overlooked.
Yeah.
And they were way ahead of the US back in 2013, 2014 in trading and exchanges. And one of the things, as I was talking to people, I realized that HBAR is the fifth highest traded security or highest traded crypto in Korea. I was like, okay, well, that's interesting. And then if you look at the way that they actually, delivered HBAR, which is different than, Litecoin, obviously the mechanism is exactly like Bitcoin mining. But HBAR, every time they released more tokens, they actually filed with the CFTC.
That's interesting. Wow.
So they're all registered. So it's I think they're the ones that did that. So
that suggested safety for you. Yeah.
Yeah, it's safety. So I'm like, okay, well, this is possibly not a security. Litecoin is clearly not. HBAR is possibly not. And then XRP, of course, was an interesting case where, they had just, won a lawsuit against the SEC. Ripple did.
Yeah.
And it looked like the courts are going to, very clearly state that, and they have already, even though, it's still ongoing, but that XRP is not a security. Like, okay, well, there's three. So we, so again, we started on Litecoin really first, and then did all three of those. Filed all three of those. And then we kind of threw Solana out there just to, everybody else did.
Well, people like Solana, they really do. And you know what? I think over the last 7 days, their official Twitter handle or X account said that they've celebrated 1 year without an outage. So woohoo, amen. We laugh as Litecoiners because we've never been down. Yeah, we've never been down. Even Bitcoin had a brief blip. So they're at like 99.98 and change, technically not 100% uptime, but we've enjoyed that. And of course, that's because of Bitcoin developers and us sharing code and catching things before, before we carry it over to core or whatever. But those are interesting stories. Any thought on Doge? it's merge mined with Litecoin. It's also decentralized. It's one of these new so-called made in America, that whatever you think of this designation. Ripple, of course, falls into that too. But any thoughts on Doge?
You know, I actually don't believe that Doge is a security either. And sure, it merged mines with Litecoin. I mean, Charlie kind of saved it, back in the day, by offering that feature. It's essentially, it's essentially a fork of Bitcoin as well. If you technically, or not technically, but it is.
Yeah, it's decentralized, proof of work, no founder stash, etc.
Yeah. All the things that makes Bitcoin not a security, that makes Litecoin not a security, makes Doge not a security.
Yeah.
The issue I have with Doge, and by the way, people on my team at Canary were dying. They were like, "Hey, we got it. The people want a Doge ETF."
I mean, they've got a government department now. Come on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I tell you, the thing that held me up, and the reason why we never did and probably never will.
Okay. So you probably never will. Okay. Very good. Yeah.
Yeah. It's because Doge has an unlimited supply, and it was literally designed as a joke to be the opposite of Bitcoin, and designed to print unlimited amount of Doge, taking the price to zero. So as a fiduciary, can you really put something in an ETF wrapper that is designed to go down in value and look people in the eye and say, yeah, it's a joke. It always was a joke. It's designed to go down in value, and I'm putting in an ETF for you to buy. I can't do it.
So it sounds like a principled decision on your end. Fair enough. I was just curious. And I think
more of a legal stay out of trouble decision.
We'll have to see. Good point. I mean, it's gotten, I mean, I think everybody that was aware of Doge, when they did the NASCAR thing, and again, when it was set up to be a joke, a tipping currency for like message boards online, I think it's blown everybody away in what it did. But you're right. It's not capped. It is not nearly as hard as Bitcoin or even Litecoin. So I was just curious about that. So maybe we're never getting a Doge ETF from Canary.
Never from Canary, but hey, other people are certainly welcome to and will, and you can access a Doge ETF from somebody else, just not me.
Very good, very good. Well, maybe you can share with us, back to the Litecoin ETF, what's the process been like? What's been done? Where are we now? The green lights you've seen?
Yeah, it's one of these tricky things when you're working on an ETF. You can't really talk a whole lot about it. I mean, obviously, I can state that what was my decision in filing. Great, here's the date we filed. But as far as like interactions with the SEC and our process, I really can't talk about that a whole lot. And just from a regulatory standpoint, but I can talk about generically how an ETF works and the process there. So generically, if you're filing for a non-security, ETF, which would fall into what's called a 1933 Act. So there's two types of ETFs. One that's guided by the 1940 Act, one that's guided by the 1933 Act. Most ETFs you see are 40 Act. Anything that holds a security, anything that holds, equities or bonds, or at least a majority of that. But a non-security has to go to 33. And it's a slightly different process. So we file for a 40 Act ETF. You essentially file on S1. You wait 75 days, which is, essentially the, red herring period. And then you can launch after that 75-day period is over. There's some exceptions to that, but that's generally the case. With a 33 Act ETF, you also have to you file an S1, but you also have to file what's called a 19B4, and that's where an exchange like NASDAQ or New York Stock Exchange or SIBO files essentially an order with the SEC to get a rule change to be able to list an ETF that holds something that's not a security. So, so what I like to do is work with regulatory agencies and not necessarily against them. So, what might happen in a in a 33 Act ETF is you file the S1, and then shortly after you file, or you work with the exchange and they file the 19B4 on your behalf. Um, you know, um, there was a bit of time between those two things. So what I like to do is rather, how do I say this? Just get a little bit of acceptance before moving forward on on any subsequent filings. But that's typically how I see a process.
I have written here the 19-4B. Do we need a response, or we'll get one by February 29th? Is that right? Or is it March?
Yeah. So the way that 19B4s work is, after you file, there's a certain number of days where the SEC either accepts, denies, or punts. And there's several times that they have the opportunity to do that, but then eventually, within a certain period of time, there has to be a decision. There's no more punting. It's either, approve or deny. So, the real answer is I don't know.
Okay, so we don't know. Because again, you were first to file. So far, it looks like everything's going through. Because there's lists of, I guess, other folks who have filed for various ETFs and different cryptos and focus, and we haven't seen a lot of the green lights that we've seen with you. I can say that again. I'm saying that as the host of the show, and from what I can see with what's been revealed with the public so far. But I didn't know if we had a time frame, so it sounds like you don't even know.
Yeah, I mean, there is a time frame, but again, it doesn't mean that something is going to get launched within that period of time or get approved during that period of time. Right now, the period that we're in is the public comment period.
Okay.
So they will, typically the SEC won't approve a 19B4 while you're still in that initial public comment period. It'll always be after that, that initial period of time. And then it just kind of becomes do we punt? Do we approve? Do we deny? But I don't, I've been watching comments coming in. It's actually been pretty positive. So I can't imagine there being anybody that writes up something negative that we would have to, answer questions on.
Yeah, we had Charlie on the show last year. Actually 1 year ago to the month. And we were talking kind of well before y'all filed. In fact, I don't think Canary was even around. Like I said, September, October is when you started your new agency. But we were talking about this idea of a Litecoin ETF and kind of the idea that if Bitcoin gets approved, how do you deny Litecoin on its merits if you approve Bitcoin on its merits? So again, we have the Gary Gensler speech. We've already heard that it's not a commodity, or sorry, it is a commodity or commodity-like from some agencies. He didn't say that, but he did deny that it was a security. He said Litecoin, probably not. I'm not a lawyer, but probably not. So he did already establish that, Litecoin is not a security. So I'm optimistic. I think many in the community are optimistic. That these Litecoin ETFs, of course, Canary's leading the charge, will be approved, and looking forward to them. So pretty amazing stuff.
Yeah, no, appreciate it. We're hoping for the best, but of course, anything can happen. And I will say this too. It was a great idea back in October when Gary Gensler was still the SEC chair. He's not anymore. So who knows? The next person that takes the chair could say like, "Nah, I don't like Litecoin."
Do you feel that with the current administration that is likely, though?
Not at all.
I don't either.
But my job is
it could happen.
Analyze risk.
Of course. We're level-headed people here. It's good. It's good.
It's good to
manage
bonds for too long. You're negative on everything. That's just who we are.
Yeah.
We always try to find them.
Let's go to the optimal outcomes. Let's say Canary's green lighted, everything's good. Is this something that will need to go through Canary to access? Is it something that I can open my Fidelity account and 2 taps on my phone, add it to my portfolio? What's it like to access this if this does go through and everything's approved?
Yeah, I mean that's the beauty of ETFs is ETFs in general make investing very easy for a lot of people. This was the beauty of putting Bitcoin in an ETF, and all the people that even before us that worked really hard to try to make that happen, starting with the Winklevoss twins. They saw that as a moment where almost anybody with a brokerage account can invest. So myself, I can go through my brokerage. It's so much easier actually to go through my brokerage account than go to some crypto exchange to trade. So and if you have a self-directed IRA, you can do it through there, which I've done.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, most brokerages do list Bitcoin ETFs, and it's expected they would list any subsequent crypto related ETF as well.
Good deal. Like I said, we're all excited to see what happens. We're following along. More will be revealed, folks. In terms of you, I guess, operating a fund like this, an ETF, so it's it is paper, but it's representative of physical Litecoins. Are you buying those straight from the miner? Are you getting them from exchanges? A little bit of both? How does that work? Especially with halvings. And I've heard, now I don't have any data in front of me, but I've heard that over the last 6 months or so, the Grayscale Litecoin Trust alone as a single entity took half of the newly mined Litecoin off the market.
Wow.
So this is wild. This is wild.
Yeah, it's crazy. Well, look, we typically, trade with several, reputable OTC desks that are out there. Names that anybody in TradFi would know, and we'll continue to do that. So, we typically don't trade directly with a person or a miner or something like that, but we trade through these market makers. A lot of them, have part of their business that are registered. So that's really where we're buying their tokens, where they get it. Who knows? Hopefully, onshore, which makes things easier from a compliance perspective. But that's who we trade with.
Yeah. Just curious. Appreciate anything you're sharing. And so far, so good. This is great. Maybe we can move to some miscellany. I know we don't have a whole lot of time on this episode today. And again, thanks for coming on. Maybe just a few miscellaneous items, and then we'll land the plane here. Looking at an old tweet, and you sort of alluded to this already, having met Charlie Lee. You wrote, "Always bet on Satoshi Light once upon a time." And I'm just curious, what inspired that tweet? Maybe you don't remember it, but we can find it in your feed.
Hey, even if I don't remember it, it's something I often say. Charlie is probably one of the best traders out there. Mm-hmm. He's regardless of what he's trading, he's one of these guys that he sees a technology, he identifies it early. He's one of the first guys in, and then is one of the first guys out as well. So he's a great trader, and if he's doing something, I'm following.
You got it.
By the way, I'll be and to take that a step further,
mm-hmm.
He got a lot of heat for selling Litecoin at the top of the market. I give him no heat. I mean, why would you not? Right? Mm-hmm. It's not like you pre-mined a bunch of Litecoin and then you dumped it on the market top of 2017. He earned it off fairly, and he has the right to sell it whenever he wants. And that was a massive top for all cryptocurrencies for a very long time. And when he got back in to Litecoin at the foundation level and started building on it again, that's when I started paying attention. I was like, okay, if Charlie's jumping back in, then the book has not been completed yet, and there's probably some really cool things that he's building.
Yeah, fair enough on that. And it's kind of astounding how that is still used, and it still echoes, people, trolls, whatever. They'll still bring this up. Charlie sold, as if they've ignored everything else that has happened since, from the foundation, from just the independent charts of the currency and how it's doing in the world. I mean, number one coin for payments on BitPay for over a year. I mean, there's just so much going on. Clearly, it's far from being harmed from his selling. You could argue that, Litecoin's been advanced so much further through in adoption and all this sort of things. We had the summits with the foundation, everything else, and that, of course, was something he helped set up. So the FUD on Charlie just doesn't hold up. And if anybody's serious about it, they'll see that. So, but it is amazing how those ghosts still come out sometimes.
But by the way, if you're not selling at the top, you're stupid.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, he mined them. I mean, we wonder if Satoshi would ever sell at, if Bitcoin hits 1 million, what if Satoshi sells? I'm not saying that's going to happen, but theoretically he could, right? Theoretically, because there is that initial supply that the creator still holds, which we don't have that with Litecoin. It was diffused. In terms of other tweets you made some pretty strong opinions recently about this whole idea of strategic reserves, whether it's the state, I'm in Texas, you're in Tennessee, states setting up strategic reserves for Bitcoin or cryptocurrency versus a federal one, if it's coming from Washington. What are your kind of arguments against that, or why do you think that's a bad idea?
Well, I'm going to be clear. I think it's a bad idea at the state level and at the federal level. So first of all, if the ethos of Bitcoin, in my opinion, is to replace the fiat system, not to enhance it. So first of all, if you're a Bitcoiner, you're encouraging the government to buy Bitcoin to back the dollar or back whatever currency you're in, it's like your ethos is flipped, and so that's number one. What I like, one country that I like buying Bitcoin is actually El Salvador, because they don't have their own currency. They're trying to utilize Bitcoin as the currency of the country. Now that is the right ethos. Okay, so I'm all for that. If you're buying Bitcoin as a country to replace either use of the dollar or use of your own currency, that is a fantastic use case. Second of all, if you put that much Bitcoin in government hands, then they control the supply.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want that. And then third, this is my argument against, Bitcoin as a reserve currency at the state level. I actually, some, state representatives in Tennessee actually approached me and asked me about, what my thoughts were. And I said, don't do it. I was like, we need people that support our industry as representatives. And he's like, well, what do you mean? I was like, well, if you go out and pass a law right now, because they're in session now, you go out and pass a law right now that allows you to start buying Bitcoin, we're at the top of the cycle.
Yeah.
And then when you're up for re-election in 18 months, we'll be at the bottom of the cycle. And all people are going to talk about was like, oh, these are the guys that wasted our state treasury buying Bitcoin. It's gone down 60% or whatever the drawdown is going to be from top to bottom. It happens every 4 years. If you don't see the pattern, then you're not paying attention. So what's going to happen to the guys that sponsor that bill? They're not going to get reelected. And now we've lost advocates for our industry, at state level. I don't think it'll happen at the federal level, but it's just, the timing's bad. For somebody that wants to get reelected. So anyway, it's a weaker argument of the three, but it's still a very important argument.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. There's a lot of talk about this, which seems to have come out of nowhere, I guess, over the past year. And then I guess behind the scenes, there are moving parts before it gets to the representatives in Washington or otherwise. But it's a fairly new idea, but it seems to be overwhelmingly popular. It's just, that's why I wanted to ask you to share your opinion, because I don't hear a lot of criticism of it. I've said the same thing on this episode, or on previous episodes of this show, that I'm a little bit concerned that it is a form of capture, because if it's all in a vault in a government address or addresses, I mean, how are we using that? How is that person-to-person cash? Bitcoin has changed a lot, and that would continue to take it down a path that I think is not the original intention. But and of course, if they did that with Litecoin or commodity type cryptos, it's the same thing. It's taking it away from individuals who could use it otherwise. Now, I understand an ETF takes a decent amount off the market too, but you're still private, and at some point you'd liquidate and sell back to the market, and so I don't think that's exactly the same as a government locking it up.
Well, here's the reality.
Yeah.
And I'll use Bitcoin as an example because it's the oldest and most, and largest. It's still in speculative stage. So what an ETF does, it allows you to invest and speculate on, the price of Bitcoin, which is great, or any cryptocurrency for that matter.
Yeah.
And as adoption grows, you've got two vehicles to hold it. One is an investment vehicle, and then of course in your own wallet as a payment vehicle. It's no different than buying currency shares, which is a type of ETF that holds various currencies. You're transacting in those currencies, but here in the States, I'm not transacting in euros all the time, but I can speculate on the strength or the weakness of the euro.
Right.
Do that. So same thing with Bitcoin. If it's going to be a legitimate currency, you do have to also be able to speculate on it, even when it hits, peak transaction. So I don't have a problem with that. But look, the reason why it's so popular, this SBR, is because it pumps everybody's bags, which is great in the short run, but in the long run, is it a good thing for Bitcoin? Probably not.
Where are we now? You've been in the space for a long time. Where are we now in the cycle? You already kind of said that we're nearing the top, if not at the top of Bitcoin. Where are we now? Where are we going, let's say, in 5 years or 10 years, with Bitcoin maybe just as a general point of interest in the crypto space?
Well, as a Bitcoiner, I'm going to say something that's very unpopular among my peers. But where we are on the cycle, I mean, if you look back at the last two cycles, which I think are a little bit easier to compare to, we really peaked out in December in 2017, and then October in 2021. So we're I think in a normal cycle, we would probably peak out around September, October of this year. But there's a lot of macro headwinds. I'm seeing a lot of signs for recession. So, top price for this cycle will probably be March, April. Is my best guess. A dull during the summer and hopefully reach all-time highs again, or at least get close in September, October. But I think that's a lower probability than anything else. I also am watching Bitcoin become, even though there's more people coming in, the network effect is pretty much already taken. So the law of large numbers really prevents Bitcoin from going up in the same amount of percentage terms in the last couple of cycles, going into the next one, or even finishing off this cycle. So my price target is actually, I made a price target about a year ago for where we'd be this year, and I've adjusted it down. I'm more in the range of 125 to 135 this year, and then 4 years from now, 175, 200. And as bearish as that sounds versus everybody else's price predictions, I think it's just the sobering reality. Not only that, as excited as I would say our generation, were when Bitcoin came out and really started becoming a thing, and other currencies started popping out too. The younger generation just doesn't care, like my kids, for instance, they don't have Facebook. Like Facebook's for boomers, right? They don't have, I mean, they own Bitcoin, but they're not into Bitcoin. They're not trading Bitcoin.
Right.
Bitcoin's for boomers. It's a boomer coin. You know, they're in the meme coins.
Truth.
So whether you're a teenager or when I say a kid in your 20s, they've kind of moved on. They're looking for the next thing. So you're not getting adoption from younger generations like you are from, I mean, the original people that were going into Bitcoin, first of all, were like just, first it was nerds, then it was libertarians, and then anarchists. I probably fall somewhere between the libertarian and anarchist. Gold bugs were also really early because they understood that store of value.
Except Peter Schiff, but yep.
Yeah, but that is, but those are the people that were all kind of, I mean, Max Kaiser was a big gold bug before Bitcoin,
for sure.
Right. So, but those are the groups that were early adopters. And, the next generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're none of those things.
Yeah.
Right. They're pure technophiles that are moving on to things that have greater speed and more efficiency, which, sorry to say, but some of the more established, more secure tokens like Bitcoin and Litecoin just don't have that. So I think we're going to struggle seeing adoption, and that's why I'm more bearish than most.
Before we end the show, any final thoughts from you? Again, we appreciate you coming on here. Where can we find you and what you're doing on Twitter, web, whatever platforms you want us to hear about? And maybe just what are your final thoughts here today?
Yeah. Twitter, I'm Stephen McClurg. Very, very simple, easy to find. Canary is canary.capital is the website. Kind of boring. But that's really what we're up to. If you want to sign up for macro newsletters, feel free to come to the website and sign up. We're usually pretty negative all the time, just like I was just kind of pop the balloon at the end, with young adoption. But again, I'm always looking for where are the risks. I'm not a very optimistic person, but I make optimistic decisions once I understand risk. But final thoughts are I still think that there's a big opportunity in the space in general. My Litecoin target is actually really high this year. I think whatever Bitcoin does, it 4x's. So, I think.
So do we get our comma?
Yeah, exactly.
You would say yes?
Yeah.
Maybe generously so. I don't know. Do you want to share? What did you have a specific number or range?
Look, I think Litecoin, my target for the year is somewhere close to 350, 400.
Okay. So no commas yet.
Not this year.
It inching towards previous all-time highs.
It'll come.
Okay, it'll come. Well, very good. Steve, I think we've done it. We're at 42 minutes. You're a busy guy. Thanks for coming on the show. Everybody check out Steve again on X and canary.capital. We appreciate you coming on the 30th episode and helping us reboot our 2025 podcast year. And we'll be watching you closely online, sir. Thanks for coming on. And maybe we'll see you in Las Vegas in May for the Litecoin Summit.
I think you will.
Beautiful. All right, friends. Tune in. Thanks for everybody who's listening today. Find us on 84million.com/podcast or wherever you stream your podcasts. And of course, we're on X. So cheers, everybody. Until next time. And thanks again, Steve. Have a good one.
Thanks for having me.